My name is Mika'ele Cruz. I am a technical project manager in the technology department at Strive Health. And I have been here at this job now for 1 month. Strive Healthcare is essentially a kidney care company. And what we deliver is essentially two sort of products kind of wrapped up in one. What we do is we collect a lot of data and then we run that through a bunch of algorithms and AI, machine learning type things, and then we deliver insights to our care coordinators, or kidney heroes as we call them, and those are nurses and nurse practitioners that partner also with nephrologists to deliver kidney care. And so the main patients that we focus on are those that have chronic kidney disease, and that can be any one of the 5 stages, and then end-stage renal disease, so ESRD. So that's essentially what we do. So in that area, I'm a project manager for the technology arm. I have a bunch of different things that I guess I would be in charge of. Specifically with our department, I handle any new internal projects that we are taking on. So these wouldn't be necessarily client facing. And then any projects that need to be managed for existing clients, so not new clients. Say we have a client that wants to add a certain patient population to our services. That's what I would handle, organizing, getting that data transferred into our platform, and then getting them enrolled into our program. So when it comes to like data or integrations of different types of software that need to talk to each other, I handle a lot of those projects. So for instance, one of the things I'm working on right now is getting DocuSign, just a signature app, to work with our Salesforce implementation that's called Health Cloud. Joining in on meetings, making sure that tasks are being handled appropriately and timely. I collaborate with a lot of different people from a lot of different departments to make sure that everything is getting done, and that I have a good list of what does need to get done for certain projects. So yeah, a lot of it is, kind of outlining what a project is. So that means like, what do we want at the end of this project? What does this product look like? What does this service look like? Or what does that look like? And then going back from there saying, okay, what do we need to accomplish in order to get that done? Including all the people that need to be included on it, and then building a plan and then executing against that plan. And while you're executing against that plan, you're going to find a lot more detail that needs to be filled out. So just doing all of that work is essentially my day-to-day, what it looks like day-to-day. Can mean a lot of different things depending on what industries you're in, right? Some of the most standard project management job descriptions that you'll find is in construction. Unfortunately, a lot of other industries will give titles of project managers to folks who aren't really working on what should be defined as a project. So, and the way project management or a project is defined by like the Project Management Institute, it would probably be the gold standard of how to determine whether or not somebody is a project manager or somebody isn't. And there are several criteria for something to be considered a true project rather than it being just like operations. So a project essentially is a temporary endeavor that will result in something unique, right? So if you are creating a brand new product and you're only making it one time, that's considered a project. If you are creating a brand new product and then handing like the daily operations of manufacturing that product back to operations, that would itself be considered a project too. However, doing something that is repetitive over and over again wouldn't necessarily be considered a project, but a lot of companies will have project managers do that type of work. So it kind of just depends on what organization you're looking at, what a project manager is. And then you also find different names really for like project managers, depending on what project management style that the company subscribes to. So traditional, what they call waterfall style project management is what you think of as construction, right? There's a very rigid like plan. There's a very rigid budget, and you execute against that very rigid plan and budget. Then there are other methodologies called like Agile or Scrum that a lot of software companies use, and those are a little bit more flexible when it comes to like the plan and the budget too. So there's lots of different ways to cut it, but project managers are typically dealing with true projects that are temporary and result in a unique either product or service or something like that. So again, the interesting thing about project managers is that a lot of companies treat them differently. So for me, my path is, I think, somewhat homogenous to a lot of people, is that there aren't really degrees in project management. So I happen to have a bachelor's and a master's in business administration, and realized somewhere down the road that I had a lot of time managing projects. So what I found was this organization called the Project Management Institute, which is generally considered to be the gold standard for project management methodology, et cetera. And their requirement in order to become a certified project management professional, so that's when you see, maybe you've seen this before, it's PMP as the initials at the end of the name. In order to get that, in order to be qualified to test for that, you have to do, I believe it was 4,000 hours of project management experience, which does get audited. So you have to be able to prove that you were managing those projects. You have to put like people you worked with, exactly what you worked on, etc. So just that part of the application, for instance, took me like almost 20 hours just to fill out that part of the application. And then after that, you have to do a 35-hour course. There's lots of places you can get that education, and then you take the test, which is a 4-hour test. Much to like this degree of what you remember from doing like the SAT or something like that. It's very similar. So that's kind of how I navigated that. Project managers, a lot of project managers you'll find out there are not certified by anybody. Like the PMI that I am certified by. However, there are other certifying bodies too. You can, get a certificate in Agile or Scrum, and those will actually have different names. They won't necessarily be called like a project manager. Some of them will be called like a Scrum Master. You can get, different certifications from different certifying bodies. And a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll collect several of them from several of these certifying bodies, right? So like PMI, they have multiple. They don't just have the one PMP. They have other like endorsements for specific types of project management. So like they have an Agile endorsement that you can get as well for your PMP. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. However, there are a lot of project managers who don't have any of this formal training or formal certifications. However, having a formal training or a formal certification like this will definitely get you further in the interview process, because it's something that the employer feels that they can trust because you did take a test, because you are certified in that area. Question. One of the things that I noticed is a lot of universities are offering like project management courses or certificates, but at the end of the day, having done that, you still have to take a test in order to actually get a recognized certificate, right? Or certification, right? So if you're really interested in doing project management, I would start by doing something, I think it's called a CPM, Yeah, so if you're really interested and you have no project management experience, what you can do is you can get the CAPM certification from the PMI, and that will kind of give you the first uh, the knowledge base in order to get started, right? And this would be a certification that could get you to become like a project coordinator, where you'd be working under a project manager, and then you'd be able to get all your hours to actually test for your PMP. That's really where I would start if you're interested in something like this. However, if you do have 4,000 documentable hours, it's either 2,000 or 4,000, I can't remember. But if you do have that amount of time, I would say go for the PMP. Study for that. Find a place that you feel comfortable learning from. There's a lot of different options out there, and then study for your test and take it. That whole process of taking that class and then studying for the test took me about 3 or 4 months, and I was being pretty aggressive on it, like doing quite a bit of hours every day. So it could potentially take somebody 6 months to a year if you're have a big full-time job, kids, etc. At my job, there's not necessarily a ton of authority that I'm given. And that's because we work in sort of a hybrid model where project managers do get to assign tasks, but we don't get to assign priority of tasks. So somebody else has a bigger say so than us. If you were to go to a different organization where where it's like a project-based company, project managers would have a lot of authority and they'd have a lot of say so in certain things. Alternatively, there are other companies who just treat project managers as planners, and then the functional managers will kind of take it from there. So there's not a lot of power there. So I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. But again, like to my earlier answer, there's a lot of different variations on what authority level a project manager is given. However, at the end of the day, you do, in most cases, since most companies I think are moving towards at least a hybrid sort of model, you do have pretty good autonomy actually, because you don't really answer to any one person. You do have people doing the actual work of the project. Not a lot of the actual work is put on you. Most of it that you're doing is facilitating communication, working with people, and with that responsibility, facilitating communications, working with people, you actually do get a lot of face time with director and executive level individuals. So interesting question. So healthcare is something that I think kind of runs in my blood. Not something I wanted to do necessarily at all. However, I grew up around it. My mother's a PA, my dad is a physician, my two sisters are nurses. Well, one of them is a nurse practitioner, the other one is in school to become a nurse practitioner. So I'm the one black sheep that wasn't in the healthcare field. And I tried my hand at like several different jobs, and being in like a consumer products industry, to being my own like freelance project manager, really. But healthcare was really the one that felt like I was making the most difference in. When, for me, I got really bored of selling products to people on social media. Like that was fun for a while until you get it figured out, and then you're like, wow, these people who are buying this don't really need this thing. It's just crafty marketing. And so that's what kind of led me away from doing marketing and trying to do something a little bit different. But that's also what led me away from consumer industries and towards healthcare, is because you do have a sense of urgency with a lot of the things that you're doing. You have a sense of that you're making a difference, really, because healthcare is something that many people believe believe now to be a right for folks. And I'm not disagreeing with that in any way. It's something that people need access to, and finding ways to make it better and smoother is really, I feel like, my calling, right? So like a company like where I'm at right now, Strive Health, we're really trying to innovate on the healthcare model and make it better, right? Because here in America, we're so lucky to have one of the best healthcare systems out there. The unfortunate thing that the biggest problem we have is that it's crazy expensive. It's more expensive than most countries, and we pay for that because a lot of the folks here are innovating, and we incur the cost that the rest of the world doesn't have to incur because we're at the front line. And so places like Strive Health that are really pushing the edge of like how to make things more efficient and make care better, make care more affordable by providing better outcomes is really an awesome thing. Some of the like top skills you need as a project manager is communication. That's probably the first and foremost thing, because you'll have to be dealing with a lot of people who you've never dealt with before. So leaning on being familiar with somebody and feeling comfortable with somebody already is not something that you can count on. So you'll have to be pretty comfortable interacting with people who you've never interacted with before. You'll also encounter situations where somebody will tell you one thing to your face and then go around and send an email to somebody else the very opposite. Be able to deal with those types of situations and then stand your ground, number one, and number two, be polite and just nice. So communications is paramount in being a successful project manager. The other thing that I spoke about a little earlier was being detail oriented. Having tools and techniques and methodologies to document a lot of what's going on, to set due dates, to write everything down. Those are all going to be really, really big on project management, right? Because the more you document, the more it is less likely for you to have something fall through the cracks, later on down the line in the project. You also have to be pretty good problem solver. Though you will have a lot of resources around you, potentially in some companies will give you a lot of resources. You will still be required to solve problems on your own, right? Or even just to incorporate people who need to be a part of the solution. So almost any project you find anywhere is going to encounter issues, and you'll be the sole person responsible for making sure that you navigate your team around those issues. I work from home. In the COVID era, that's a very common thing. I have a laptop. I have a second screen here set up on my left. I have a pretty sizable desk in here. I also have a desk behind me for other things to keep my workstation clear. That's the desk I just throw everything else on. And this is a standing desk, which is really nice. That keeps you, like, if you're feeling a little sleepy in the middle of the day, just press the button, comes up, and you're feeling a little bit better. But this is really all you really need in order to make this be a successful project manager. As far as like physical tools, there's a lot of software out there that you can use as well. Obviously Zoom or GoToMeeting or any one of those like virtual communication software, that is massively important. Having a good headset or something like this, for if you got some things going on in the background, this is really crucial, because this microphone's a lot better than the one on the computer. That's pretty big. Good lighting is really important. I just got this really nice, massive lamp that goes over my desk that changes colors, and that's pretty sweet. A very nice, comfy chair is also hugely important. One thing that I think that people um, would glance over pretty quickly is a keyboard. But this keyboard was just like the free one that came with my computer, and I hate it. And I can't wait to. I just ordered a new one, and I can't wait to get it because I can't tell you how many messages I've sent on like Slack or emails that I've had to like go through and edit again because the keys just don't feel right in your hand. And when you're doing that potentially dozens to hundreds of times in a day, that you waste a lot of time doing that. So finding things that make you a little bit more efficient is, pretty big. Um, Obviously, there's going to be a lot of tools and things out there that other industries would need. So, like if you're a construction project manager, I'm sure steel toe boots would be, on the list of things that you'd need. But for working from home, there's a lot of really good technology out there that you can find pretty easily for that. One of the other things that we use on a daily basis is Jira, Jira. It's a project management software that is pretty powerful, but very, you just need familiarity with it to really use to maximize it. It's not necessarily like a beginner's project management tool. That being said, there are a lot of much more user-friendly project management tools out there that you can use, a lot of which would really be helpful in getting that done. Another one of the things we use is called Confluence, and it is made by the same people who make Jira. And Confluence is a really, really cool thing for documentation. It basically is a giant online notebook that your whole company has access to. And it's really, really great for, like we talked about earlier, documentation of anything that's going on. And you can look back at other projects that had certain types of documentation. But again, same with Jira, it's only as good as the people who are using it, right? So if you don't document a lot, you're not going to get very much advantage from it. And if people before you don't document a lot, then that's a problem too. So a few tools there. Our company is relatively small. When I started a month ago, we had like 120 employees. We're now at 150. They were growing really fast. And every single day, a new person gets added to my list of people I have to interface with on a project. So the internal technology team right now, I believe, is like 30 or 40 individuals. And I have to interface with at least 25% of them on a weekly basis, if not more, probably more. And then not to mention all the other folks outside of technology that I have to interface with as well. So for a small company, I would say that I do have to communicate with a lot of different people. That being said, as a project manager, you will be communicating with a lot of different people, regardless of the company that you're in. And that goes not just internal people. We talk to external folks, people outside of our company, very, very frequently, at least once or twice a day for different companies. Yes. So my job description basically said up to 25% travel post COVID, right? Because I was hired during the COVID era. So they're saying we're all remote right now, but when we're not, up to 25%. So yes, there potentially could be travel in this job, but no commute time. So that's nice. I commute from bed to this room, which is about 12 feet, I think. I think that project management is a good career for somebody who wants to make a pretty good living. I've seen project managers make anywhere from, 75 to 150. It just depends on what type of projects you're managing. I know that, for instance, construction project managers make a lot of money, and that's because they're handling really, really, really big projects. For instance, a position like mine at like a larger organization would probably be even close to like 150, 200, working on really, really big IT projects. That would include like doing all of the computers for a hospital, right? Something like that. That is a multi-million dollar project, where I think that project would probably be like a $50 million project, right? So those type of project managers would make a pretty significant amount of money. And I am in the low six-figure range right now. I can see how a lot of people would think that project managers are somewhat worrywarts, or sticklers for the details, and are a little bit pushy, right? A lot of times there's like a fight between resources, and those are people who work on the project versus the project manager, where the project manager wants to know exactly how long something's going to take to get done, and the person doing the work is like, I don't really want to tell you, you know what I mean, because I don't know. And there is some friction in that regard, but other than that, I don't think that there's really like a, like a stigma like an accountant might have or something. My favorite part about this job is how many different departments and different people and different experts you get to interface with on a very regular basis. Um, like, this is like, for instance, sometimes I feel like, oh man, I'd really maybe one day like to be a software engineer because it looks really fun what they're doing. And then the next day, I'm like, man, these guys over here on the clinical side doing clinical design are doing really fun stuff. And that would be fun to try out too. And what's really nice is that I do work with both of them. I don't have to decide which one I like to do because I get to do both. So I think there's a lot of freedom in project management in that regard. Because if you become a good project manager in one industry, you'd be able to transition to a different industry pretty well. So for instance, right now I'm in healthcare technology, but if I wanted to go to like finance technology, that wouldn't necessarily be all that different. There would a lot of the same core competencies would transfer pretty well. I think that going from a job like I'm in right now to doing like construction project management would probably be difficult, though, because those are very, 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 very different. And the style of project management is also slightly different. So one of the things that I find difficult is time management. And this is because so much of my time is spent communicating with people that it's hard to like set time to just, actually get everything organized and actually get into the work that I as a project manager have to complete. So yeah, that can be difficult. I wouldn't say that's my favorite thing to do. It would be really, really nice to be able to pass that off like to somebody junior to me. And this is maybe an answer to one of your previous questions, is that like certain organizations will hire project managers that will be above project coordinators. And project coordinators would do a lot of that sort of lower skill work of documenting and, getting kind of doing all of that, which would be really nice, to be honest, in my current position. But Yeah, so like a lot of those types of things, they just take time. And like I mentioned earlier, those aren't things that I'm particularly, um, naturally gifted at. So they do take effort from me to do the detail oriented work. As far as being a project manager, I had a pretty good idea of what it would be like jumping in because of the certification I sought out in the from the PMI. And before then, I didn't have really. Um, I never had a project management title, so there would just be me managing projects as part of my normal day job. But so I had a pretty good idea there. So I would definitely have liked to have known about project management sooner. So if you're interested, do some research, just do some Googling. The Project Management Institute, which is pmi.org, their website's a really good place to go. There's a lot of free stuff on there. There are um, things that you have to like buy membership in order to like look at as well. But there's a lot of free resources on there and you can get started there as well. Um, yeah, easily just Google things and you'll find something there. Um, Tech or being in healthcare. I think one thing I would have liked to have known about this before it choosing me really, because my first healthcare gig was in high school or college, and I realized this then was that things move really, 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 really slow in healthcare, really slow. Um, so that being said, you just have to kind of expect that, right? Because healthcare is a big system and there's a lot sort of riding on it. So if it were to move too quickly, there's a lot of, backlash that could happen, right? So um, just know that it does move slow, that um, there's a lot of laws that govern it. So everything you do um, will have some sort of regulatory effect, right? So one of the big things that we have to deal with is HIPAA constantly. So like we have a whole department here that's just focused on compliance for that. So anytime we want to get a project done, it has to go through them. And there's just extra steps, which makes sense because it's people's health that we're talking about. So this wouldn't be the type of job where you'd be like having a family and um, still going out and going to the gym and stuff like that. Because any job you have gives and takes, right? So um, I easily work, of course, the standard like 8 hours a day, but I don't typically eat lunch during that amount of time. Or if I do eat lunch, it's you know while I'm working or during a meeting and just turn my camera off or something like that. Um, but that in these positions, it would really depend on type of company you work for work-life balance because my company does a really good job at that. Like they give us awesome benefits. We have like a flexible PTO policy, which means that we actually don't really have a PTO policy, which is awesome. But you also have to accomplish the tasks that you're given. So I would definitely think that this is a good career for somebody to jump into. You wouldn't want to start this career, I think, while you already have a lot of other responsibilities, because it does take a lot of time, and then learning how everything works would just be pretty cumbersome. However, if you have I can imagine, I don't have any kids, but I can imagine having young kids right now would be pretty challenging. But however, if you had like older children who are like school age children, I think that would probably be fine. I think that the number one way to understand whether or not you want to be a project manager is to look at what a project manager does. You know, and just a quick Google search will give you really what you want to know from that perspective. And then if you're creative enough to kind of think through those responsibilities and then apply them to different industries, then you can really get an understanding of what, you know, whether or not this would be a good fit for you. Because I really wouldn't want to be a construction project manager. Like, I really wouldn't. That's not for me. Um, uh, but technology, yeah, I'm all about it. And some other folks who are construction project managers wouldn't want to do the same job here in technology, right? Because they're very different. So if you definitely just do a quick Google search, I think you'll find what you're looking for. So if I were to go back and tell myself 18-year-old me, what what to do next is I would tell him to not rush into a 4-year college. I would tell him to um, spend time, because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was 18. For those folks out there who are committed to being like doctors or lawyers and they really want to get started on that, that's for them, you know, to run right into college. But if you don't know, there's nothing wrong with going to a community college and starting to figure that out and tasting a bunch of different things, right? Like, I was lucky enough to have for healthcare to have found me, but I only got there because I was just trying different things. You know, I had this, and still do have this, very insatiable appetite for learning new things, and nothing really kind of set well with me until well, like I say, healthcare kind of found me, right? Especially healthcare technology, because there's just so much to learn and so much to be a part of, that if I didn't try new things and kind of get out of my comfort zone, then I wouldn't have seen it. I can't stress the importance of having a good place to work, especially the younger professionals coming into this new COVID era. Working on the couch just doesn't cut it. Like, maybe for a couple hours in the day, that's fine, but you definitely need like a place to go to make that happen. And I know that's not necessarily in everybody's, you know, budget or anything like that, but definitely trying to find ways to create a space for you to work in at home if you're working remotely, I think is really big. Like, it's really hard to get work done in your own bedroom. You know, I have a very difficult time doing that. So if you can set up like a little corner for yourself, like in the kitchen or something like that, where you're not next to your bed and other distractions, that's really helpful. Invest in productivity, I guess, is a good way to put it, because everyone's a little bit different. I knew one of my neighbors before, when he worked from home, he would just work in the garage standing up all day on his computer, you know, and that worked for him. That would be probably pretty hard for me. I'd start like tinkering on something else. I would tell everyone to avoid an MBA like the plague. Unless it's from Harvard or one of the top schools, they are useless. Unfortunately, I have one, so I know. I don't know, because some people really value those things, and I don't want to like be disparaging, because you learn stuff. It's just, for most people, I think it's like, if you were like my friend or my child, I would really advise against it, unless you were to get it from like a top like 5 school, you know. Alternative to that, I would do something like I did with the PMP. I would get a PMP. It's a lot cheaper. You learn a lot more. It's more hands-on. People actually, I think let's just say, when I got my MBA, I didn't get no one knocking on my door. As soon as I got my PMP, people started knocking on my door. Big difference. And like, when my friend says, "Oh, I want to get an MBA," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, what do you want to get your emphasis in?" They say finance, and I'm like, "Go get a master's in finance. Don't get an MBA with an emphasis in finance," because you get more hands-on, like, actual knowledge. An MBA gives you a little bit of everything, which sure was maybe good like 20 years ago, but it doesn't translate well into today's job market. So an MBA is not exactly um, as potent as it used to be. So you can do more potent things with the same amount of money, um, like a master's in finance or a master's in healthcare administration, like for instance. But and if you're like an executive already who needs to expand their business knowledge, an MBA is perfect for you. But somebody who's, working a run of the mill job right now, like I was stuck at like a 9 to 5 um job that I didn't really like care for and I wanted to like advance. MBA did not help me advance out of that job. It was the PMP that helped me advance out of that job.